Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Shaw here, ready to go. This time we are talking about the legislative branch. So I'm going to have 4 videos over the legislative branch. And the first one here, we're just going to really kind of establish a foundation of what the legislative branch is and then kind of what their purpose is. Again, you guys already kind of know that, but we're going to go a lot deeper into kind of the background behind it, and then also just, what function do they serve in our government. And again, that's what the next couple units are going to be. We're going to do individual units for each of the branches, so you guys can get a little bit more familiar with them. All right, let's get to it. All right, so we're going to start off with the role of Congress in a democracy. Okay, so firstly, why is it bicameral? Okay, we know going back to the Revolutionary War, okay, Congress, we needed a government, and so we started this. We started a Congress, the Continental Congress, but again, it was not necessarily super organized, and so once we, kind of developed it through the Articles of Confederation, and then eventually it was, not, I don't want to say perfected, but it was, it was essentially stabilized under the Constitution. The idea behind the legislative branch is that it is the branch that is directly elected by the people. Again, this is the most powerful branch, and the idea is we want to make sure that that one branch that is the most powerful, that has the most power, cannot really become tyrannical. Okay, so that's where we come in, where checks and balances and separation of powers come in. Madison himself believed that members of Congress should enlarge and refine the public's views. So basically, that's a fancy way of saying that and again, this next thing, like the framers believed the average citizen was a prisoner of the moment. The framers didn't think that the average person or the average citizen was smart enough to really know what was best for them. Okay, and again, in a lot of ways, they're right. Like unless you're a government teacher, it's difficult to know every little thing that goes on in our government and to know what is going to necessarily be best for the people, at any one individual time. So again, the idea here, because they had so much power, is that they wanted to limit the powers of Congress to avoid chaos and unpredictability, because again, sometimes the people might want things that may not be what's best. Okay, so job description of the members of Congress. Okay, first and foremost, they are representatives. Okay, they represent the people of their state or district. They are also committee members. Okay, again, that's actually where the bulk of their work takes place, is in the form of committees. And we'll talk about that a little bit in a later video, like the different types of committees and what they actually do on committees. And then the last one is that they are servants. They are public servants. Okay, and their goal is to, kind of bring things back home to the people. And we'll talk about what that looks like here in just a second. Okay, so first off, as representatives. So Congress people are elected by constituents. Okay, so again, if you don't know what that word is, okay, that is just the people that they represent. Okay, so they are elected by constituents to vote on their behalf. They're going to govern on behalf of the people that voted for them. So Congress people can kind of basically, I'm not super worried about you knowing these words themselves. But basically, when they make decisions, they have, they can take a couple different things into account. First thing they can take into account is, what would the people back home want? Okay, that's going to be a delegate. If they only worry about that and they vote kind of how their people would want, that's a delegate. Okay, somebody who is considered a trustee, okay, they use their own conscience and their own morals, okay, for casting their votes and making decisions. Okay, so again, they're not going to worry about what the people at home want and what the people at home would do. They are going to do what they think is best. Partisans, okay, if you see partisan, that's just a fancy word for party. Okay, it's somebody who's like really party focused. Okay, so a partisan is going to vote in allegiance to common party values. So like, again, if a partisan was a Democrat, they're going to vote along Democratic lines all the time. Okay, if somebody's Republican, they're going to vote along Republican lines all the time. And then we have Politico, and a Politico is just basically a combination of all of these things, where, again, if the people care about something, they're going to vote based on how the people want. If the people don't care about something, they're going to vote on what they think is best or how their party would vote. Okay, So committee members, okay, again, we're going to talk about this, but I'll go more in depth into what the actual committees look like in a later video. So each chamber has special committees, okay, and so in these committees, they're going to look at proposed laws, which are called bills, okay, and they're going to be referred to committees. So, like, for example, there's going to be like a committee on agriculture, and if there's a bill that has to do with farming or agriculture, that's going to be sent to that committee. So committees consider every bill, okay, and again, their job is to research, to debate, to amend the bill, like change the bill if necessary, and then eventually, if they agree, they think the bill should become a law, they're going to vote on it and pass it on to the full floor, like the full House of Representatives or the full Senate, in order for it to be considered there. And that's what I mean. That's what I'm saying right here is they determine whether or not to propose the bill to the entire chamber, and that's called a floor consideration. Okay, so again, make sure you just know that it goes to the committee first. A bill goes to a committee first, and then it goes to the full floor for consideration. And again, the fourth video is going to be all about how a bill becomes a law. So don't get stressed out if you're not quite ready yet with how, kind of how this works. Okay, so the last one is servants, okay, and they're going to be helping folks back home. Again, there's a lot of different ways that they do this. The first way is they navigate federal bureaucracy and tasks by, again, just making sure that laws are being implemented appropriately, especially laws that kind of deal with, that affect their citizens more specifically. They're also going to secure government contracts for their particular state. For that one, in class rather, I'll talk about what's called pork barrel legislation, and that's kind of getting into what pork barrel means. So we'll talk more about that in class. And then they also will can appoint people to military academies in their districts, or from people from their districts to military academies. They also handle Social Security benefits, and then if you want a tour of Washington, D.C., you can ask your representative for that. And if they don't do these things, though, if they don't provide things for their people or for their constituents, they may end up losing votes during the re-election, and they may lose their office if they don't help the people. Again, remember that though they're the most important ones because they're the ones that you actually vote for. Or they actually vote for you, rather. Okay, next up are the terms and sessions of Congress. All right, so again, this is a little bit confusing just because they kind of sound similar and it just means a couple different things. So again, the terms are set based on every 2 years. Okay, so like each, and the reason they do that is because the House of Representatives, the members of the House of Representatives, they get reelected every 2 years. So each term lasts 2 years, okay, and each term starts at noon on the third day of January, okay. So again, that's because of the 20th Amendment. That used to be March 3rd, but then again, they moved it back. So each session, okay, there are 2 sessions per term and 1 session per year. So again, sessions are just time in which Congress assembles or convenes to conduct business. So again, they're going to meet pretty regularly throughout the year. And they'll have certain breaks. Again, it says here they may take a recess if a break is needed. And then Congress can end or adjourn a session if both chambers agree to do that. But again, so basically just keep in mind, again, a term is 2 years. Okay, and then within that term, there's 2 sessions. Okay, and that just, again, like if you don't get something done by one session and you are not convening anymore, you can't really start business back up again until the next session. Okay. All right. The president has a lot of influence over Congress. Okay, and no, it's not, and it really is just because the president is, one of the most powerful people in our government. Okay, and so he is going to kind of exert his influence because he has his own agenda to pass because he wants to get reelected. Okay, so the way to do that and the way to get your agenda passed is to get laws passed in Congress. Again, President Biden is trying to do that right now. When he actually just passed one of the first major bills of his presidency, which was the infrastructure bill to kind of help with like roads and like highways and airways and things like that. So anyway, the couple things that the president can do is, again, he can call a special session of Congress. So if Congress is not meeting and there's like a particular emergency or something, or like, say there was a disaster or a terrorist attack while Congress wasn't in session, the president can call a special session of Congress to discuss important or imminent matters and kind of help create solutions. Prorogue is something I'm not super worried about you knowing, but again, a president can end a session if Congress cannot agree on when to adjourn. So that would, again, if like one house thinks that they should still be meeting and one house that wants to end and go on break, the president can decide for Congress in that regard. The president also has to give a State of the Union address to Congress every year, and we'll talk more about that when we get to the presidency himself. But again, just know that that's kind of one thing that the president does to kind of not exert his influence necessarily, but at least kind of keep Congress up to date with what's going on. Okay, congressional compensation. Okay, so this is kind of a weird thing too, because Congress they are in charge of the budget, and so because they're in charge of the budget, that means that they essentially have the ability to set their own salary, which would be really cool. Except that they can't do it just in whenever they want because of the 27th Amendment. So again, as you guys know from the last unit, the 27th Amendment again says that congressional pay raises take place next term. Okay, so that means that. Like now, if they vote to raise their salary, that's not going to take place until the next 2-year term of session takes place. So, again, basically the idea is if Congress was focusing on raising their salaries too much, the public would really be like, well, why are you guys voting on this stuff and not, solving our problems or not helping us, with solutions to our problems? And again, that would allow the public and the media to really scrutinize what Congress is doing, and the president obviously can veto that legislation if he thinks that Congress is being too greedy. Again, the average congressperson right now makes about $174,000 per year. And the speaker makes $223,500. Again, that sounds like a lot of money, but what you should remember is that you're essentially working all the time, okay? And it's a very, very difficult job, and so it's not really. Again, it sounds like a lot of money, but when you actually work out the hours and the time that you're actually working, it's not very much. Some fringe benefits for congressmen is that, again, congresspeople are compensated in ways other than salary. They have certain tax deductions. They also have travel allowances, again, because you're going to have to be traveling back and forth from your state or your district a lot, okay, back to Washington, D.C. So, again, they're going to give you some deductions for that or allowances for that. They also do have medical and health treatments. Again, they're going to have, really good health insurance and things like that. There's a very generous retirement plan. Again, they have, if you're any government worker has a part of the like a government pension that they get paid essentially at the end of their career anyway, which is cool for them. And again, they also have franking privilege, which means that they can send mail to their constituents without postage. So that doesn't sound like a really big deal. But if you think about, again, let's say, I don't know, like each district has about 800,000 people in it. So if you wanted to send a piece of mail to every single constituent in your district, that would cost you about $400,000. So again, franking privilege, again, is the idea that they won't have to do that in order to send their constituents, information or, anything like that. Okay, so the big question here is, why don't more people serve? So again, this is kind of getting back to what I was mentioning about the compensation. Again, it's a very challenging job. Okay, and now it's especially more challenging because your every single action is really, really scrutinized. Again, the public is going to scrutinize a lot of what you do. The media is going to scrutinize a lot of what you do. And so there's really, really long hours as well. And it's honestly it's kind of expensive to be a congressperson. Again, you get certain travel allowances and things like that, but in order to get elected, you usually are going to have to be pretty wealthy already to kind of run your own campaign and things like that. So it's really difficult to get elected anyway, but also you really kind of have to have a lot of money to do that in the first place. And honestly, not everybody has it. So like, again, as a teacher, like if I wanted to run for Congress, I would, need to find a lot of sponsors, because I don't have a whole lot of money sitting around, to start running, congressional campaigns and things like that. So anyway, I think that ends us for this one. Yep, that's the last part, guys. I'll pick up next video with the 2 houses of Congress and going more in depth into those. So I'll see you next time.